In some ways, Hinduism is very much like Gangama, the mighty Ganges River, in that it's broad and it's powerful, and as it goes downriver, it expands and then uh, pulls into it all these different streams, all these different traditions. And so there are many things in Hinduism that are hard for at least a Westerner to understand because they seem contradictory. Now, historically, Hinduism uh, has its origins in the merger of two different cultures. The Harappa culture that existed prior to 2000 BC in the Indus Valley, and then the Aryan culture. The Aryans were an important people group who came from Central Asia and East Europe, and they moved out from their base of operation into many countries in all directions, really, into Germany and into Rome and Greece, and ultimately into India around the year 2000. It's not clear to me whether uh, their entering into India happened as a matter of conquest or simply as a matter of migration. But the fact is that the merger of these cultures began to give birth to what would eventually evolve into early Hinduism. It was their search for God that resulted in the writing of the Vedas. The most important of those is the Rig Veda. We'll talk about it later on. And based on the Vedas, the Aryan kind of religion uh, was birthed, and then eventually it evolved into Hinduism. So, as we study this, I want us to think about these streams. We've seen a little bit of the streams of Harappa and Aryan culture coming together, but in a more formal way, Hinduism often speaks of three different paths. Uh, they're sometimes referred to as yogas. And a yoga is a way for people to perfect their union with the divine. And because the yogas suggest roads to perfection, they're also called margas or paths. So I've seen these three different paths referred to both as margas and as yogas. I've put them on the board here as yogas. And then I've added two modern yogas to them. Now, the word yoga is a combination of the English words for join and yoke. So a person is yoking themselves or joining a particular path or particular way. They're choosing that this is the way that they should go. And in Hinduism, there is this recognition that different people need different paths, that based on your caste or your personality type, you will determine which yoga it is that you should practice. Well, let's look at these. The first of these is referred to as jnana yoga, knowledge yoga. It's the yoga that brings insight into one's divine nature. When a person is studying the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and their commentaries, and they're learning from various spiritual teachers, jnana yoga is particularly appropriate for priests and for intellectuals. It's the more philosophical path within Hinduism. And then we have karma yoga. Karma is being used here in its broadest sense of meaning action. This type of yoga says that all useful work if done for the right reasons, if done unselfishly, can lead one toward perfection. We do lots of things for money or for pleasure, but karma yoga says that when there's not a personal reward, that is going to lead us in the right direction, lead us toward what they would understand to be liberation or salvation. A third type of devotion and a third path would be bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is devotional yoga. Most people at some time or another will fall in love. And you remember this sense of being uplifted and the excitement, and you have a spring in your step. That's a little bit like bhakti devotion. It expresses a devotion and a love relationship with a particular God. Now, it's unclear whether the adherent of bhakti devotion, of bhakti yoga, would be someone who believes that each of the gods is just an emanation of the one universal spirit, or whether they would be so devoted that they would really see their God as the one true and only God. So there's kind of, again, this difficulty of defining things within Hinduism. But again, this would be expressed in a lot of different ways. And we would find some of the expressions, for instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna, the main character, tells Arjuna that you're to regard me as your dearest loved one. Know me to be your only refuge. And we learn at a certain point in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is an avatar. He is an incarnation of God, of Vishnu. Well, a different kind of yoga is Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga promotes meditation by emptying oneself and by coming to a place of trying to do away with the illusions of this life and this world. A person is trying to prepare themselves for being absorbed into the great universal soul, Brahma. And then in the West, the best known form of yoga is Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is a series of exercises. The word Hatha means force yoga. So you're stretching, you're doing these different exercises, and the goal of this is through physical exercise to prepare yourself mentally and spiritually for the great insight and awareness that comes from the other forms of yoga, and ultimately to be absorbed back into the great Atman and the great Brahma.